cohort. And of course, we know that people have moved and things aren't quite exactly the same, but it's our fourth grade cohort starting back in second grade. So we're gonna look at some data with them that shows their proficiency levels and their reading levels. Because as we, on our tip, we want 75% of our students at Carlos Kuhn to be on or above reading level by the end of the year. So that is what all of this reading block, revising it, going to Becky K training, looking at those three components of our reading block, the independent reading, guided reading, and the strategy grouping are all supposed to be targeting as we go through this. So I look back, and in 17-18, this is what the proficiency, the amount of our cohort, our fourth grade cohort passed on the STAR. Our universal screener was under 40%, and then on our last CDB, we were at about, 42% proficiency in our reading levels. So this is what this fourth grade cohort starting from last year looks like. But then I went in a little bit more in depth and I broke it down. I looked at our levels of this fourth grade cohort starting in second grade with their IRI levels. And this is beginning of year and this is end of year. So in second grade, there was approximately 77%, I believe it was, that were on or above reading level. And as we can see, then in third grade, at the end of the year, it was just a little bit above, I apologize, I have the notes here. Right here. Let me give you more specifics. So second grade, beginning of year was 52% on reading level, end of year was 72%. That's what our IRI data shows. Then when they were in third grade, it shows 63 at the beginning of the year, and they left that year at 64% on reading level. Yes, so now in fourth grade, we came into the year at 68. When we did our first IRI, it was at 68%. So if anyone has their device along, if you want to go in and look at your reading level, what you are right now, I was kind of looking through it, we're about 44% at on or above reading level. So we don't have all the data in from the last IRI, so I want to look at that a little bit more just to see where we are sitting right now halfway through the year so that we can figure out what do we need to do to get those students on or above, especially towards that 75%. So when we look at our reading levels, I thought one of the things for me from Becky K training was when we were all talking about, okay, well, my student can read, they can read that level, but they don't understand it. And that was huge. I mean, in order to be on reading level, they have to be able to comprehend, right? So that's what we're gonna look at today. We're gonna look at some comprehension questions and really look at, Priscilla and I have been talking a lot about how can we use that whole group guided reading time to really delve deeper into our questioning techniques so that we can get more comprehension from them. Because if we can show them how to do it, model it during whole group, it's gonna carry over to independent reading, to their strategy grouping, all of those. So, the next thing I want to do is play a video for you about a poem we're going to be studying. Can we get this on? Can I turn it off for a minute? Shows it's on. There we go.
They're too young.
I know. Okay, so that's just a brief video that I found that walks us through someone's interpretation of the poem we're gonna be studying next week. And this poem is Oranges by Gary Soto. Okay. So on the second page, if you wanna turn to that one first, here, I'll give this to these guys too. Down to 'em. On the second page is the poem, and it's long. But what we want to do is, we're gonna go through it now, and, I've included some different things in this. Besides the poem, if you wanna look real quick before we start reading into it, on the first page is a little background information about this poem, about the poet, and things to look for. Some of it, like they talk about some things in there, it says, where was it, at enjambment, the device of enjambment. Well, that's not in our fourth grade TEKS, so we're just gonna have to just look at what they're trying to tell us about the analysis and use it towards our fourth grade. If you go back 2 pages, then go past the poem, and I've included, our fourth grade reading TEKS. And I was thinking what we need to do is look through here and find what do we need to look for comprehension, and what we can do that matches the TEKS and for this poem. And then one other piece of paper that I want us to use is, this is the STAR standards and question stamps for grades 3 through 5. This is a compilation of different types of questions that have been used on STAR testing, so that when we're making our questions, are we using the same rigor that they're using on STAR? Cool? Okay. Who else? Here. Give you just a couple minutes to look through, and then we'll read through the poem together. there's anything that stands out. Right. Yes, those ones were words. And, did you see here the poetry ones?
All poetry is supporting.
Right? Supporting teas. Interesting, right?
Yeah, but then there's more back in the
More on the back, yes. Patty, where did you find the readiness standards?
That's R and L.
I saw one or two that was in here with poetry, but I have to look back.
Okay.
It's more like, why didn't the code include this probably?
Is this though something that, what are your thoughts on being able to take what it's saying though for the other questioning, you know, the readiness standards, not necessarily for poetry genre, the genre of poetry, but maybe using some of the other ones to help us derive meaning?
Well, there's one, it's on 4.3.
Okay.
And it also says figure 19B. It's on page, the second page.
Second
Oh,
page?
yeah.
It's up towards the top. It says what is the message of this poem?
Mm-hmm.
And the next one can be used too. What lesson does the character learn from?
4.3, yes,
So that's one readiness standard. That includes poetry.
that's good.
But any kind of inferencing, like why did the poet include this, is gonna be like,
Right, because even though I think just because it says it's for poetry, and we can look at the other ones to help us derive meaning. Main idea. You guys need a couple more minutes to look through these? Are you ready to read the poem?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that's on page 2. And, I'll start, we can just take turns going through, does that sound good? Oranges. The first time I walked with a girl, I was 12, cold and weighted down with 2 oranges in my jacket. December. Frost cracking beneath my steps. My breath before me, then gone. As I walked toward her house, the one whose porch light burned yellow, night and day in any weather.
A dog barked at me until she came out pulling at her gloves, face bright with roach. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and led her down the street, across a used cart lot and a line of newly planted trees, until we were breathing before a drugstore. We entered the tiny bell, bringing a sales lady down a narrow aisle of goods.
I turned to the candies, teared like bleachers, and asked what she wanted. Light in her eyes, a smile starting at the corners of her mouth. I fingered a nickel in my pocket, and when she lifted a chocolate that cost a dime, I didn't say anything. I took the nickel from my pocket, then an orange, and set them quietly on the counter. When I looked up, the lady's eyes met mine and held them, knowing very well what it was all about.
outside, a few cars hissing past, fog hanging like old coats between the trees. I took my girl's hand in mine for 2 blocks, then released it to let her unwrap the chocolate. I peeled my orange that was so bright against the gray of December, that from some distance, someone might have thought I was making a fire in my hands.
Okay, so there's a lot of different things in here. Anything you guys see that there stands out, just from looking at it? In,
That imagery, you can see that picture going on in your mind.
would you think of playing the video before then, before reading the poem or after?
I'm almost thinking after.
I like, yeah, read it, play it, and then read it
Mhm.
again, so that way
They can see
they
it.
can
Okay,
see.
good.
Yeah, cause I actually like to read books before I see the movie, so it's kinda like
Mhm.
this, read the poem.
Make your
Right.
So that way they can
You
have
create
their
your
own
own
picture
image.
in their mind and then compare it to what
What they saw?
they saw.
Event, yeah.
Okay. Any, vocabulary in here that they might not know?
Rouge,
Rouge,
yeah.
exactly, that was what I was
Rouge.
thinking.
tiered as well.
Tiered, narrow. So I think that goes into, Alina, you said that first page here talked a lot about vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can look at, when we're going over those words, of pulling out some of these star stem questions to, use when we explain these. So that would be what, 4.2B?
Yes.
How about, any figurative language? Similes,
Yeah.
metaphors?
Fog hanging like old coats between the trees.
Ooh, good one. That's,
I like the frost cracking in my steps, my breath before me and gone.
it's
It's
good.
not really an imagery, but it's like,
It's
it's figurative, or sensory language.
sensory, right? What about the candies tiered like bleachers,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What do you see, Casey, anything? No.
Trying to do two things at once here. A
Oh,
few cars
gotcha.
hissing
Hissing
past.
past, I saw,
Yeah.
yeah, that one
Hissing.
stood out. Hissing past.
Hissing past? Well, that's a good one.
Well, just the whole, I peeled my orange that was so bright against the gray of December.
Yeah, I was reading here too, and it talks about contrast, like for imagery. There are several contrasting images in this poem. It is winter, December, so the weather is gray and cold, contrasting with the oranges that are warm and brightly colored.
Mm. So what would we need to ask, do you think, or how could we word it to get them to, because it might not be evident to them right away is what I'm thinking, that we're contrasting to, maybe it will, but what if not? You know, so we need to think about, the misunderstandings or the things that might catch them up before we go through it. So what kind of questions would we use to pull that out of them? We're looking at the part, I'm gonna say that part again, it was right here, Priscilla.
Yes.
We're looking at oranges,
Right.
and we're talking about questioning about how to get past, like, what if they're having any problems coming up with, the contrasting images, what could we ask them if they don't see it right away?
And they are looking at their star step
Yes.
questions?
Yes, I have those out. We already found some for vocabulary,
I think it's like the fourth page, but it's
Okay.
5.8A, it says, read these lines from the poem. The imagery used in these lines allows the reader to know that blank. So, like the gray of December, they should know, okay, it's probably not sunny if it's
Right.
gray outside.
Mhm.
And then the imagery, like fire in my hands, they can imagine, okay, what would like
What would be the
fire in your
opposite
hand,
of-
right?
Like something.
that's awesome, that's good. 5.8A,
Yes.
good job, I like that. Good job. Awesome.
Yes, these are absolutely great questions to have. Going through them and highlighting
Which ones?
which ones pertain particularly to poetry helps too, to be able to go through it a little bit easier, because I know there are so many
Right.
on each page.
Right.
I'm sure we can also use the poet uses figurative expression one to emphasize that the speaker, so any of the,
The idioms,
well, that or like,
which one?
On 5.8A, there's a bunch of different kind of ways
Yeah.
you can word it.
cause there's figurative language in here and why is it in here?
Which one, Shirley? That's the one?
Right.
5.8A, it's on
Yeah, perfect.
right?
It's on the third,
It's right here, go to 5.8,
Fifth page,
keep going,
is it?
third piece of paper. fifth
right
page.
here,
Yeah.
Oh,
right
there it
here.
is.
Yep,
Yeah, we see it. Also keep in mind that just because it's, you can look at third grade TEKS as well, especially when you're building them up. So you can look at thirds and fourths to also help when you're looking at those poetry STEM questions.
Oh, is this, wait.
figure 4.10, figure 19D. Make inferences about text and use textual evidence to support understanding sensory language, the next page. The next page.
Which T?
Oh, that's informational text though, culture and history, sorry. But it's the same thing of what was the purpose of the text? Why do you think they wrote it?
Yes.
What is the message?
And just so you know, like the last, however many weeks we've been doing this now, 8 read alouds, whatever, when we've done it during the week, that little teak that's been next to each question,
Mhm.
this is basically what they've done, except this time we're able to do it ourselves. Okay, so when we're looking on Pearson, or we're looking or I'm looking, that's where the teaks are coming from. This is great to be able to know, this is how we can get good quality questions that have that rigor that our students need. That way they can get used to this type of questioning, so that when they see it on STAR,
It's not a
shock.
Yes. So what we need to think about between now and Thursday, is that the next time we're meeting for reading,
Yes.
right? Right, is to figure out what questions do we wanna put into, if we know them already, we can already write them down. What questions do we wanna put into our lesson plans that talk about the things that we've talked about today with oranges?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So we need to decide between now and Thursday, because in our lesson plans, we need to put in those questions that we want to highlight
Mhm.
about oranges. What are the ones that we found in here that we want to add to our lesson plans to really make sure that we're getting that comprehension, that deep comprehension, from the students?
One way that we can do that to make it, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I will say, I feel like my kids, I don't know about y'all's, like, as far as like similes and metaphors, like, even when I'm just like reading, they pull it out.
Yes.
They're like, oh, there's that in there, so I don't really know if we need, like, my class needs to touch on that part too much, because that's what, that's like what their eye is drawn to. I think it's more of like the imagery that they need to work on, like understanding and seeing, because I was reading one of the poems and some of the kids are like, what's that? I'm like, well, they don't have a lot of background knowledge on what, they don't know how to picture something,
Right.
because they don't know what it is.
Yes.
So, I feel like maybe working on like imagery questions for them.
And that's where coming up with like a multitude of questions, like each person coming with 2 to 3 questions, because some are gonna overlap. But if each of you come on Thursday with at least 2 questions,
Yes.
then we can have those kinds of discussions as well, as far as when you're looking at your lesson plans, what pertains to your class may not pertain to another, but that question is available if needed.
Okay.
So you would know to put the emphasis on an imagery question, whereas someone who maybe their students are struggling with
Right.
similes could put their focus on another particular question.
Okay.
But those questions need to all be available to us as a team, and like a bank of questions that we can pull from.
So 2 to 3 questions for Thursday's planning.
Yes,
That works?
that works.
That
Then we
works.
can plug them in quickly and easily into that section on the curriculum map and then our lesson plans.
And, I'd say we keep these in our binders, because this is a really good one to hold on to. Awesome questions in there, and it's what I use to do the ones for this
Oh.
week's questioning as well, for, mother to son.
Yes.
Yeah, these were awesome, this was a great resource. Any questions about what we need to look for
These need to be the questions by Thursday?
Thursday?
Okay.
Yep, for Thursday planning.
Neshim, I think
Yes.
you were, still getting here this morning, cause I stepped in before it started.
Okay.
That's your whole group packet.